Welcome everybody to another episode of Learn Biz. Your host Ryan Murray, Ethan Miliori. Excited for a topic that I had come across an article a while back, and actually it wasn't so much the article as much as the concept, and I love how they portrayed the concept of it.
Yeah,
it got me thinking about it just because it really took some managerial styles and kind of said, all right, look, here's a way to look at this versus over here, and maybe on how you want to grow your company from a managerial side of it. And so I like that concept of it. So the idea behind it is this idea, and you can Google it. There's some good information out there, and I'm going to modify it a little bit because of the nature of our show, because they use founder and the whole idea that was, they were talking about, Silicon
You're getting ahead
Valley.
of yourself. Give the basic idea, okay, and then you can get into the details.
Thanks. So, founder mode versus manager mode, and I'm tweaking it to be entrepreneurial mode versus managerial mode. But the founder was because of looking at more of the Silicon Valley type startups and that kind of founder stuff. But that's not really, I would argue, our clientele. The people that we're focusing on versus the small business, which really is that entrepreneurial mode, even though there would be some crossover, but I'm going to use entrepreneurial mode versus manager mode, not to take anything from the premise that was expressed in the article.
So basically we're looking at, should you manage your business through an entrepreneurial mindset, or should you manage your business through a managerial mindset, or team? Maybe team is a little bit more in line. And
talk about, and we'll talk about some of the pros and cons, because it was interesting as I tried to really understand the concept between the two and laying them out. It was interesting that for the entrepreneurial mindset and management of that, that it sounded really good from a guy's perspective, but I read a number of other comments from female entrepreneurs that says, I don't know, we have mixed feelings about it.
Oh, interesting. I didn't dig that deep, so we'll have to get into that.
I'll share some of the reasons why.
Okay.
Because of it. So let me lay out, and then you fill in blanks as I miss them. So entrepreneurial mindset mode is basically saying that as an entrepreneur, it's my business. I've started it from the ground up. I'm highly invested in it, and I want to be in a productive way, very hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And hands-on at every level, meaning I want to be hands-on with my management team. I want to be able to be hands-on with the manufacturing side, the sales time. I want to know everybody and how they're doing inside the organization. It's very hands-on, engaged, supportive, working through those issues, not necessarily with my management team, but sometimes it could be someone on a line, manufacturing line, or if it's more service industry related, that I'm engaged in that. Okay. Now, which kind of feels like I'm micromanaging, but the point of it is that no, there is a difference between that and micromanaging because of how I'm invested in it. Right.
Okay.
Now, the managerial side of it says that from a managerial side mode, that as a manager, I'm only interacting with a few key people inside of the organization. Okay. And then those key people are interacting with their key people and so forth down the chain. Right. But I'm more of a hands-off laissez-faire. I'm only going to deal with a couple of people. I'm not going to go out visiting,
I'm not in the weeds, as I like to say it.
Yeah, perfect. That's a good way to say it. So I'm very top heavy in the management style, right?
Mm-hmm. And giving a lot more authority, autonomy to the management team to make the decisions, because I think that's a very significant distinction here, is where the decisions ultimately are made. At the founder mode or entrepreneurial mode, as you're kind of shifting it to the entrepreneurial mode, the decision rests with the entrepreneur. But
Right.
the entrepreneur takes the time to be involved in every aspect of the business so that when they're making those decisions, they know the ins and outs of all the moving pieces. Management mode is you would have a typical management structure, someone who's going to oversee the financing side, someone who's going to oversee the sales and marketing side, someone who's going to oversee the operations side. And then those managers would then be making the decisions, and the entrepreneur would be going off of the advice and
Right.
and the input from the managers. There's a little bit more protocol, maybe some red tape. That was one of the things that came up in the article.
Yes.
Which I'm going to challenge some of those things. I actually found that the article was fascinating, but I'm going to challenge some of those beliefs. With a spoiler alert, I don't think that there's a right way or a wrong way, but I think that they each yield very different results. So depending on the results that you're after,
I agree.
There is doing something, expecting different results, having a very casual, managerial heavy business and expecting explosive growth is a mistake. Like that's not the recipe for explosive growth. And so if you want explosive growth, the founder mode or the entrepreneurial mode is more likely to yield explosive growth, for example.
Yeah. Now, as I read a number of other things that were related to, because there's a number of other articles that have been written tied to that with, expressing opinions and stuff. It was interesting that on that entrepreneurial mode, that as you're highly engaged in it, that people can feel that it's being micromanaged, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it was kind of trying to express that the idea isn't the micromanaging of it. The idea is that I want to understand everything that's going on in my business, because if I started it from the ground up and I've got it to this point, I likely know something or have some experiences that someone newer in it being trained or working their way through the weeds may not understand, and my input could help them say, okay, yeah, if we tweak this one, we'll allow to have the growth that we want and that expansion.
Now, I want to hit on something that really stuck out to me, and that is the level of involvement and commitment from the entrepreneur.
Right.
And so this is kind of inferred from the article. This was not expressed in the article, and I am inferring. So if in your articles and reading, and if you find anything contrary, please chime in. But one of the things that I've seen throughout my career of consulting is that you have some entrepreneurs that want to literally be in every decision,
right.
But do they back it up with the homework? Did they take the time? Yeah. Because I've seen the entrepreneur that wants to be involved in every decision that is very well informed. They know everything that's going on. Like, they can tell you the financials better than the CFO can, type entrepreneur. Yeah. Compared to the other entrepreneur that just got back from a long weekend of scuba diving, and they are just going to make a quick, rash decision because they hold that mantle of authority and they can make that decision. And honestly, there's a big ego boost. It's cool to be on vacation for a weekend, to come back and then just start calling the shots. Like, that's what it looks like on Hollywood. Yeah. And so there's this big ego boost. It's not fun to have to pore over reports and financials and everything after business hours. Like, that type of entrepreneur, they put in significantly longer days than the other.
Here was an interesting perspective, and there's a theory behind it, and it might hit me, I slipped in my mind now, but the idea that when you're in a growth or improvement mindset, okay, which is what they're trying to say the entrepreneurial mindset, mode is, and is that if I'm always trying to improve and grow and enhance and change and look for better ways, okay, then as information comes to me, okay, I'm open to it because I'm trying to improve. Where on the other one is that too many people, they work and work, and then they get to this position or this status, okay, I've reached the top, I've proved myself. I can kick back now. I don't have to work as hard anymore. Well, what happens is that mindset creates a defensive mindset.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Because now I have to defend everything. I have to defend my territory. I have to defend, so I can't let anyone else into that territory because they'll take something from me. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting perspective that if the entrepreneurial then hits into that mindset that I've achieved this one and I'm so great and now I have to defend it, we're not growing anymore, then it becomes destructive to the organization. And then it becomes, instead of actually working with employees, it becomes I'm micromanaging them, right?
Mm-hmm.
To do that. So it was a real interesting perspective about that. If that changes somewhere in that process from being growth and improvement, and we're always trying to do it, to now, hey, I'm at the top, I'm the king of the hill, and don't question me and my decisions, and I know what I'm doing, and it then it becomes destructive. Which I'm not saying that the managerial mode is that, but it's kind of portrayed that the managerial mode is more in line with that instead of this growth. And I thought, wow, that's interesting.
So that's going to bring me to a bigger concept that I need to put out there to help me wrap my brain around this. Because at face value, it seems simple. Well, entrepreneurial mode is, okay, is the founder or the owner going to be heavily involved in making the majority of the decisions? Managerial mode, is there a management team that's going to be making the decisions, and what are the pros and cons? Yeah. That's kind of, the face value, what's going on. But I look at it and I say, okay, there's a lot of hidden undertones here. And one of the things that was pointed out in the article was that a lot of CEOs didn't realize that they had shifted to a managerial mode when they intended to maintain an entrepreneurial mode.
Yeah.
It alluded to the fact that this sneaks up on you. And which makes a lot of sense, because as you hire people and you hire more competent people, right, and they step into their roles and you want to give them autonomy to do their role, and you assume that that's good management. And this was actually arguing that maybe it's not, which was very interesting. But so one of the things that I have to get out in the open so that I know it sounds like a confession coming here, but is understanding your goal behind what your business is. And this is an interesting thing that hit me. So when I first started doing business consulting, I was actually in more of an urban area. It was pretty population dense, and everyone there that was doing a business, they were more aggressive. They wanted growth. They wanted to really achieve. And then I actually transitioned out to a rural area. And when I started doing business consulting there, I came across more lifestyle business owners that they're just like, if I want to be open Wednesday, I will, but if the weather's good, I'm going fishing. Mm-hmm. and so it was interesting to see that you can't just consult everyone the same and say, okay, everyone's looking for explosive growth.
That's right.
And I think that that's one of the things that you've got to realize when determining what mode would be most effective is, what are you trying to go with? And one of the things that I look at is this explosive growth mode. So the data behind how many second generation and third generation entrepreneurs fail.
Right.
Well, a lot of that is because you get this powerhouse first generation entrepreneur who wants to hold the reins, wants to make the decisions. They don't retire until they're 83 years old. And so by the time they finally step out of the way, there's no one who was built up in the ranks that has any clue how to do anything with this company. And so I look at it and I say, man, if explosive growth and you being the entrepreneur, the head, is really the driving factor, then you need to be in entrepreneurial mode.
Right.
If continuity, if transition is what matters, you need to be in managerial mode. And so there are reasons to be in both.
Well, and the one piece that was interesting, going along with what you're saying, is that in the managerial mode, we're putting so much trust in those managers that they're making the right decisions. They're what the information they're providing us is accurate. And the argument was that they're not. Some of those managers are not competent. They're just faking it. And so your company's getting worse because they're feeding you misinformation and you think everything's fine until you find out that it's not, right?
Yeah.
So the argument for the entrepreneurial mode is that if I'm trusting my managers, but I'm having interaction at every level through the company, I know whether that information is accurate, right? Is it's coming through, because I've had some conversations with other people that are kind of aligning with that one, or whether it's disaligned to say, we got a problem because what you're telling me and what I'm hearing are two different things. And that's the piece about the entrepreneurial mode that I liked, is that it's not that I'm not distrusting people. It's that I am having enough interaction with every department at every level on my side of my organization, so that if any point in time there's information that's mismatched, it allows me to ask questions to say, hey, wait a minute, time out. Let's explore this some more because I'm getting a different perspective.
Yeah.
Right? Now, and at the same time, then the argument is also that if my managers know that I'm engaging even at a small level, at every level of it, they're not going to try to hide something, right? We're going to have a more open communication. We're going to be more direct on how we do it. Hence, we're actually, as problems arise, we're dealing with it as a team instead of them trying to tackle and maybe hiding something. And anyway, so that's the argument between the two, even though I agree with your comment that managerial tends to be more stable and it has to be there.
Yeah.
But the entrepreneurial one is kind of an interesting.
So I'm going to make a pretty bold claim, and I'm going to put the disclaimer out there that this claim is not data validated. And so
the article said that too, by the way.
There actually, that was kind of a fascinating thing. This is a Ryan Murray non-data validated claim. If you have a management team, do not be fooled. They are there for a paycheck.
Yes.
And one of the things, and this is an argument for the entrepreneurial mode of management, is at the end of the day, it's your baby. And no one on your management team will care at the level that you care.
That's right.
And one of the things that you've got to realize, and this is actually, again, non-data validated off the cuff, but I guarantee if I took the time to do the data, I guarantee that it would come out and justify and validate this. But the trend is that people are becoming less and less loyal to companies.
That's correct.
And as they become less loyal, that's happening in your management team. It's a stepping stone. It's a stepping stone to either a bigger position for them or a better lifestyle for them.
That's right.
And so when you talk about these managers being incompetent, it's the Peter principle that's happening here. If you think of human nature, we have been trained as a society, as a culture, to get the most output with the least input. So how can I get paid the most with doing the least amount of work is essentially what we're trying to go after. Well, you look at the salaries of the management team. Typically, they're the highest salaries. I mean, you could have a star salesperson that's out doing it or something like that. But for the most part, management salaries are very high salaries. And they're trying to, if they feel like they're putting in more effort and getting paid less, they're looking for a better personal equation. So statistically speaking, yes, you are going to hire a bunch of Peters who are going to, promote themselves to the level of incompetency and try and pretend that that is where they belong. And the problem is it's kind of hard to, that's hard to uncover. That's hard to, because if you think about it, the entrepreneurial mode is involved in all the details. The managerial mode is not involved in all the details. So how are you going to know that your manager doesn't know anything if you don't know anything yourself?
Right.
So sorry, I'm kind of like, I'm a little bit all over. Maybe I'm disjointed today. So hopefully it's staying together.
Well, and the nice thing about the article, it didn't say that this is the way it is. It says, look, this is just how it was presented and something to consider if things don't feel right inside of your organization. Maybe you're not as hands-on as you need to be, because the idea that that whole, hey, I'm gonna hire the best people and just let them do what they do best, right?
Yeah.
Well, it only takes one of those, I thought I hired the right person and they really didn't do their best and now we have problems, to throw a company into a tailspin, And so you have to assume at some level that is going to happen. That's, one of my management team, for whatever reason, is just not at the top of their game, whether that's age or skill set or any other reason that to where they shouldn't maybe be there quite yet. And I got to make that adjustment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But at the same time, I also like the idea that, hey, look, I'm sorry, without a strong management mode and having a strong managerial team, I don't think you can move your organization to the next level as well, because especially if you're a true entrepreneur, you're chasing that next exciting thing, right? And that you're in that dream mode and that growth mode, that innovation mode. And most managers are not. They're really good at the day-to-day stuff.
Right.
And you need that to happen to free up your time so you can focus on the bigger picture and the horizon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think there needs to be a balance there. I like the idea and the concept of it. It gave me a lot to think about, especially over the years as, you and I have worked with other companies of helping maybe explain some of that model, because for me, it was a nice way to explain some stuff that somehow I didn't know how to quite coin the term.
So I'm not going to argue for a balance. I'm actually going to argue for an optimization. And
Okay.
Let me give you the example of what I mean. Again, going to go to some sports analogy. It used to be that if you had an endurance athlete, all they did was endurance. And so if you had a long distance runner, a long distance swimmer, they just did endurance. And the idea was that weight training would bulk you up and slow you down. Mm-hmm. And so you had these two things that were at odds. You had weight training and endurance. Yeah. Strength and endurance seemed to be at odds. Well, through more modern science, sports science, they've realized that these are not at odds. They're actually, when they are combined correctly, they create the top performing athletes. My hypothesis is, I don't think it's either entrepreneurial mode or managerial mode. My hypothesis is that they have to be strategically combined.
I totally agree.
And I don't think we're there yet. I think that there are too many philosophies of business, just like there's philosophies of running. Yeah. I used to do a ton of distance running, so that's kind of my wheelhouse, right? There's a ton of philosophies of running. And in the early days of distance running, it was if some guy could run fast, he wrote a book. Now there's more science behind it. There's more study behind it. And it really, the book, The Perfect Mile, it's a great book. Honestly, even if you're not a runner, I think you should read the book, The Perfect Mile. And it gives a little bit of the history. So running became a sport in about the late 1800s. Prior to that, people ran for utility, like they needed to get somewhere. And then in the late 1800s was the first time they were like, no, let's do this for entertainment and fun. But one of the recommendations was, and I'm trying to remember this, it was after your run, you needed to drink a pint of blood and lay naked on your bed for 30 minutes. Like, this was a legit, I wish that I could remember exactly what it was, but I'm not that far off. It was so whacked, and there were teams that would train. They would like run with, they'd hold bamboo rods above their head as they would run around, because supposedly that was, and so a lot of those myths got wiped out with more data backed. Anyway, I think the same thing is, I think anyone that goes straight entrepreneurial, there's pitfalls. Anyone that goes straight managerial, there's pitfalls.
Well, and let me share, because this would be the last point I would want.
No, because I want to hear, you were going to explain the difference between the male and female.
And that's what I was going to talk about.
Okay,
right now,
okay.
Because this would be the last one I'd want to share, is that it's interesting because still in culture, at least the American culture, that if a guy is direct, right, he's direct and he's in control and decisive. But if a female is direct, she's a 5-letter word, and she's a Hagatha, and she's and all the other negative things that go with it, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, that was the same argument, that because our culture isn't quite made those adjustments, even though I think it's improving every year and it's getting better. We're not there. That if a woman in founder mode is hands-on, okay, and wants to be engaged in the business, that now all of a sudden it doesn't work for her, because she's viewed as that domineering, I can compete, and aggressive, right?
Yeah.
And so
which
there's
is
still
funny
women
right now. So this is a clean show, and you and I are struggling to describe this. Not that I've got plenty of adjectives. I'm just trying to keep it a clean show.
Right.
And that's a testament to what your point is, to say that culturally, I can't describe this without being very derogative.
Yeah, that's right. And so that was kind of the perspective from a number of things I saw coming from women business owners, that I get where you're trying to say, and I don't disagree with it, but I can't apply that directly as you've presented it, because we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's 1 year away or 50 years away. It's amazing that sometimes society makes shifts really fast, and other times it takes forever. I chasing a dumb squirrel. I saw that a meme that showed like a Roman chariot, and then it showed in 1880s, we're still in a cart and buggy for like 2,000 years. Nothing technology-wise had changed, but from 1880 in just 2 years to 1980, I think is what it was, or whatever that time frame was. I think it was 200 years.
That'd be 100 years.
Oh, so in 100 years, all of a sudden, so in 100 years, all of a sudden now we're showing a jet in the sky, and not just a jet. I mean, they were talking about the stealth jet, something that was highly technical in so many ways in advancements. So it was really interesting. So some things change for whatever reason really fast, and sometimes things don't.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know if there's some logic behind it as much as it's clear that it doesn't. So anyway, so that was the perspective, that for some of this, it would be easier for a guy to implement, and he'd probably have more success. For the female counterpart, it may not be.
I do think that it is more challenging for a female to lead an organization than it is for a male to lead an organization, from the aspect of the female's going to get less respect. She has more boundaries put in place of what she can and can't do. And if the guy comes in and he's just going to bulldoze his way in, it's more commonly accepted. Yeah. It's just like, whatever, he's a jerk, but he gets the job done.
It's changing to where
it's
that
improving.
Equality is there, but I still would agree with their comments. It's not there yet.
Yeah. No, I think that's great.
Food for thought.
I don't know that I have anything to add to that. I think that's an interesting thought. I mean, I could go off on tangents, but I don't have anything to add to that. So.
Any concluding remarks that you might have?
Nope, I'm golden.
Okay. Well, anyways, we hope you enjoyed the thought behind it. We love the concept of that entrepreneur mode versus a managerial mode. It's food for thought to think about your organization and maybe what is a better model. And I think we both agree that there's a middle ground right there that actually would be the best model, because both sides can kind of in some ways be viewed extreme and a little bit detrimental to the organization. So anyways, look at your organization. We'll put a link to the article in the notes below that you can actually go and read a little bit more about that and do some of your own homework as you're trying to understand what's best for the growth of your organization and expansion. But I do like the idea that always be looking to grow your organization and expanding. It's a healthier way to run an organization. So with that, if you have any thoughts, send them to I'm going to get this one wrong. I always Ryan Murray at...
It's just Ryan.
Darn it. See, I told you. Ryan at learnbiz.co or Ethan at learnbiz.co. I've tried this so many times and I've screwed it up. I don't even know why you let me do any of this stuff anymore, but thanks for your patience. This has been like a year now. I keep screwing this one up.
It's been longer than that, but it's all
good. It's so bad. Don't point that out. Now people are listening and I just got totally discredited. It's all good because I hold myself accountable. One of these days, one of
these years,
and I think about it all the time, and still, you know what I mean. Anyways, you might need to cut all this out at the end. Anyways, thanks everyone for joining us today. Look at your organization, figure out what works best for you.
Take care.